The future is fragile, and the profession that touches the lives of each and every person in our next generation is facing what feels like an insurmountable crisis. In a poll that was done by Gallup, they share that K 12 education is the number one profession experiencing the highest level of burnout across the United States. And a glance at headlines on any given day tells us this isn't just a US challenge, it's a global challenge. A Pew Research report shares why this is the case with a survey that reveals 68% in education find their job overwhelming, 52% would not advise a young person to become a teacher, 70% of people say that their school is completely understaffed, and 53% of those in education believe it's going to be even worse in 5 years, not better. After reading The Song of Significance by Seth Godin, I wonder, how might we make being in education the best job ever again? What conditions must exist that make people say, I have the best job ever? And that's a question that Seth Godin asked 10,000 people across 90 countries. And here are the top 4 things they mentioned. Number 1, I surprised myself with what I could accomplish. Number 2, I could work independently. Number 3, the team built something important. And number 4, people treated me with respect. Hi, I'm Dr. Sabba Quidwai. I'm an educator, storyteller, and entrepreneur, and I've been researching this question for the past decade. I believe that one answer to making education the best job ever again is by creating cultures of innovation that begin with a culture of empathy. While generative AI tools like ChatGPT and others are new, the challenges, but also the opportunities that we have in front of us are not. I graduated during what many would consider to be our last inflection point, the year 2007, when Steve Jobs first released the iPhone, and it was the beginning of the app economy. And just a few months later, in 2008, with the global recession, my very first job also came with my very first layoff notice. And it wasn't until later in my career, after things began to settle, that I started wondering, why did my teachers not prepare me for a world that was going to be drastically different than the one that they were growing up in? Because while a majority of people like me were facing the challenges that came with a recession, there were people like Steve Jobs who were launching the iPhone. It was a time when companies like Facebook, Twitter, Airbnb, and others were launching. And I believe that one answer to this discrepancy is shared by author William Gibson, where he says, the future is here. It just isn't evenly distributed. Education is truly the only industry that touches the lives of every single young person each and every day for a good majority of their lives. As they say, we spend the most amount of our time in school growing up. So if we want a world where everyone has access and exposure to design their future, we need to make being in education the best job ever, not the worst job ever. And I wish I had an AI app that would be the answer for you. And many of you might even say there is, citing the number of applications that can generate lesson plans, multiple choice quizzes, and so much more. But when I reflect back on the history and the promise of EdTech, I believe it's this very substitution trap and short-term mindset that has completely eroded our profession and brought us to this very tipping point that we're facing right now. When we are at our most vulnerable, overwhelmed, burnt out, stressed, even the slightest bit of help can really feel like a lifeline. And I believe that if we continue to accept a mediocre vision for what technology can do and for what it can help us create, we end up becoming our own worst enemies. So I don't have solutions for you, but what I do have are questions. And your ability to engage your neighbor, your team, your school, your district, your community is the deeply human work that no AI can do for you, but that if you answer these, AI and other technologies can act as your accelerator towards the outcomes that you are looking for, both personally and industry-wide. Each of these questions come from the research that I did with educators at Design 39, a public school in San Diego, California, who use a method called design thinking. At Design 39, those educators are called learning experience designers. Why? Because as their former principal, Joe Erpelding, says, when you change the language, you change the conversation. And this is what it looks like to create cultures of innovation that begin with a culture of empathy. We do this using a method called first principles. Now, first principles thinking encourages us to question everything, to strip away all of the assumptions and get back to the essentials, allowing us to really build solutions from the ground up, not fall into the substitution trap. And I really hope that that's what these questions help us begin to do. The educators at Design 39 believe they have the best job ever. And by answering these questions, we are going to work towards making this the norm, not the exception. I'm not going to lie, this work is not easy. The educators at Design 39 will tell you this isn't easy work because the work that is deeply human never is. And that's why this is a moonshot idea. But I believe that by starting with these three questions, we can put ourselves on a pathway to manifesting this moonshot idea and making education the best job ever again. I hope you'll join me, so let's begin. Question number one, what energizes you? When we begin with collaboration, one learning experience designer shared that they begin by asking this question, what energizes you? She said, sure, we can do all the things, but why? If I'm really great at data analysis, I can lead with that strength. If you're really great with technology, you can lead with that strength. 9 brains, they said, coming together are much better than only one. Now, as you listen to that, you might be wondering, how many of us really get to work in this way? And that's what first principles thinking helps us break the mindset of. It helps us break down the barriers, enabling us to innovate beyond the traditional constraints that we see right in front of us, preventing us from taking steps towards something that might be different. By avoiding the substitution trap of superficial fixes, first principles will really allow you to create something fundamentally different and more effective. Now, you might be thinking that Excel sheet and the whiteboard and the schedules, it's all just too much. And it might be too much for us because that's not our strength, but it isn't for your AI tools. And this is what it means to have AI tools act as members of our team. So how can you get started today? I want you to answer this question by taking a free quiz called the Spark Type. It's one of my absolute favorite resources for starting this conversation. Then, when you've taken it, go ahead and share those results with your team. And at your next meeting, as you're coming together and sharing your Spark Types, I want you to open up an AI tool like ChatGPT and use my Spark framework to help you design a prompt that might look like this.
So here we are again, sharing the situation. We've just completed a Spark Type to understand what energizes us. But despite knowing your strengths, we fall into these traditional roles, creating inefficiencies. Our aspiration is to leverage our Spark Types to better distribute tasks. And the results are aligning tasks with our natural strengths to lead to higher productivity. Give me 5 strategies to implement this new collaboration model based on our Spark Types. Now, again, we're using very simple, very basic information. We would obviously want to give a lot more details that are contextualized to our scenario, but you'll see over here that it's going to start generating some strategies for you to be able to get started. And this is where it just becomes really important to keep the conversation going, really choosing something that you like. You could even upload the data of everybody's Spark Type so it could get really specific. But let's just say we loved this last one over here, the celebration of wins and recognition. Again, we could give it more detail about things we have coming up and things we have going on so that it can personalize this to our context.
I call this method prompting the human before the machine. It allows us to come together using first principles to first consider the problem we are trying to solve. Because as Don Norman so brilliantly says, a brilliant solution to the wrong problem is worse than no solution at all. So solve the right problem, which brings us to question number 2. What will be different this time? When we look at the progression of technology over the years, we can see generative AI tools are just another mark of what's next. And this definitely won't be the last. Yet, while many people were taken by surprise, the research has really been there all along for what we needed to happen so that we wouldn't be taken by surprise. And there's very few things being shared right now that haven't been shared over the past 2 decades. In 2001, Paul Atwell shared, it's not enough to place technology in the hands of kids. We must also address what he called the digital use divide. We have to change the tasks that students are doing with the technology, reminding us again not to fall into the substitution trap. Yet, when we look all around us, how different do assignments really look from when me and you were in school? So today, with tools like Canva, every single person can be a creator, turning their ideas into work that they can not only showcase to their teacher and peers, but to the entire world with a portfolio. But changing how we teach and learn is hard. It's actually very hard. And it's also extremely time consuming, especially when we have such limited resources and we're also working alone most of the time. But one thing that is different this time is that we don't have to do this work alone. So again, it's time to call on your AI tools, the members of your team who can take these tasks on. Here's just one example of how you can do this using my Spark framework.
Here we have a spark where she's sharing the situation, 10th grade English teacher, recognizing we can't keep doing what we've always done, an immediate problem, the rise of cheating, an aspiration to cultivate an education environment where students are encouraged to engage authentically, results, reduce incidents of cheating, and increase student engagement by implementing new teaching methods, and Kismet, my favorite, share 5 strategies for how we can get started. And this is a very simple prompt, but just coming in with really kind of explaining your situation, your problem, your aspirations, your results, and then asking the tool to help give you ideas is one way in which we no longer have to do this work alone. And after looking at a couple of these, you might be like, oh, I love the idea of student reflection and metacognition. Okay, let's go deeper with those. And you can really just keep the conversation going and going until you get what it is you need.
When we begin to embrace AI tools as members of our team, we can turn our obstacles into opportunities. And so that everyone has the confidence to be able to do this, it's essential for us to answer question number 3. Do people in your organization feel safe trying something new? Harvard professor Amy Edmondson calls this psychological safety. This means feeling safe to take interpersonal risks, to try something new, to speak up if you have a question, to disagree openly, and to surface concerns without fear for negative repercussions. In our enthusiasm for what's possible, these voices are often neglected and vilified. And oftentimes our enthusiasm for what's possible prevents us from being able to see multiple futures. Yes, it can be amazing and go this way, but it can also go this way. And these debates and discussions really help clarify our thinking. And it's one of my favorite ways in which AI tools can participate on our team by asking, when I'm thinking about this idea, what have I not yet considered? What scenarios could we emerge as we consider multiple futures? I've said it before, and I will say it again. These questions and this work is not easy. The human work never, ever, ever is. The strategies above will cost you absolutely nothing to try, yet they demand one thing that we know we don't have very much of, and that is time. However, the choice about how you use the time is going to determine not just the future of our profession, but also the future of how well this next generation is able and prepared to thrive in their world. Every single moment we have and how we spend it is a choice. And choosing to invest in answering these questions and engaging in first principles is what will differentiate those who fall into that substitution trap, who continue to struggle with that one more thing, versus those who are able to create new ways of teaching, of learning and working, and can actually take advantage of what today and what the technology today promises us. The line that sparked my motivation to learn more about AI and what's possible for us in our profession and in every profession is the exact same line that motivates me today. It's from the second machine age, at the end, where they say, technology is not destiny, we shape our destiny. And if you would like to learn more about how we can shape our destiny, I invite you to visit designingschools.org, where I share more about how we can build cultures of innovation that begin with a culture of empathy.